Enter the Eckrich $1 Million Challenge. One lucky winner will have the chance to throw for $1 million at the 2017 College Football Playoff National Championship Game. No purchase necessary. Void where prohibited. Sweepstakes ends December 11th, 2016. Contest rules online.
On the latest episode of the Bill Barnwell Show, I talked to Daniel Adler about Week 9 of the NFL season. You can check out the show on iTunes or by going to the ESPN app on your phone.
This is Mike and Mike on ESPN Radio and ESPN2.
The referees aren't talking to each other. They're looking around. No one knows. And you can tell no one knows. And so from a player perspective, that does not give you a vote of confidence.
I don't know when I've ever seen a program as disgusting and as despicable as this one.
You've got Dan Carpenter coming in, and obviously Richard Sherman's offsides. He just plows into Carpenter.
I want to block the kick. I'm not going to let him make a kick.
Yeah, it was a ridiculous play. So I had some words.
I just wish he'd coach his own team. That's it. Just coach your own guys.
Now, here's Mike and Mike.
Here we are, Mike and Mike, presented by Progressive Insurance. Our guests on the Shell Pennzoil Performance Line. Election day comes and goes, Mike, as they always do. An historic result, surprising for many yesterday. And as we've been saying for 16 years on this show, on days like this one, if you are here with us on ESPN Radio, on ESPN2, we assume it is because you would like a break from all of that. There are certainly lots and lots of places this morning where they'll be doing all of that all over your television and all over your radio. And obviously you and I have our thoughts as well, and those are things that we'll discuss in other places, because this is a place that we come every single morning, and we like to think you can depend on this being a place where the two of us will be arguing about the delightfully insignificant things that we talk about every day.
Yeah, but listen, we have to fully recognize the significance of what happened last night, and we've been together a long time, and there aren't, I don't think, many things as significant as this election season was and the final results of this election, given what the polls had been saying, who was leading and who eventually, with Hillary Clinton was leading and Trump winning. So this is one of the more impactful things that has happened during our time. But you're right. If people are tuning in here, whether it be a radio or TV, you want to hear about sports a little bit. There's, as we said, and I watched a lot of it yesterday, as I'm sure a lot of people did, all the political stuff as the election was going on. But I guess the biggest thing would be, what a surprise for a lot of people if you were looking at national polls to what eventually did happen.
That's correct. So, but again, we've got a lot going on in the world of sports, and if you would like a break from all the other things that are happening, we will try and be that for you here this morning, as we try to be every day, and we'll continue to. So let's go off the top here to get things started, Mike, and we'll start with your hometown Cleveland Cavaliers, who lose their first game of the season last night. They had won 11 straight over the Hawks, including the playoffs in the process. But last night for Cleveland, it was not to be.
Yeah, the Cavs dropped now to 10-2 when LeBron, Kyrie, and Love all score 20 points, losing the first game since November of 2014 in that case. Listen, you knew it was going to happen. LeBron had an off shooting night, only had 2 of his 23 in the first half. Shooter and Bazemore went off for Atlanta. And, that's where a lot of thought of Dwight Howard. Can Dwight Howard kind of be Dwight Howard in Atlanta without the huge expectations of him like there were when he was with the Lakers? Has that changed for him in Atlanta? I don't think the Hawks are going to be, are going to push the Cavaliers for the top of the Eastern Conference. But, certainly a good win for them last night.
Well, and that's really one of the questions as the season gets rolling along, is can we identify anyone who's going to push the Cavaliers? If you'd like to see it, and I love LeBron, and I would be very happy to see Cleveland back in the final, but I don't want it to just be a walkthrough. Is there like a team out there? Who can we find? Will it be Toronto? Will it be Boston?
Will it be the Pacers? A lot of people think maybe it'll be the Pacers.
Gotten off to a bad start. I see Jeff George talking already about how they're in a bit of a malaise. Is there a team out there that we can find that will make it interesting as they go forward? We'll find out. Elsewhere, the Warriors, Mike, will host the Mavericks today in their first game since Steph Curry set the NBA record for threes in a game by knocking down 13 of them on Monday.
Yeah, he needs 10 more to break the record for most three-pointers in consecutive games set by himself last season. That's why I said again. When
he should just have all the three-point records, and then we don't have to worry about it.
He does. I think that's where we are. This last one he got with the 13. Now, he was tied with Donyell Marshall and Kobe. Now he has it to himself. So, as I said, I thought he already had it all by himself anyway. So nothing shocks me when it comes to the three-pointer. If there's ever a trivia question about a three-pointer in the NBA, my answer will be Steph Curry. and 99% of the time, I'll be right.
And 99% of the time, so will everyone else.
The top.
James Harden has scored 30 points and had 10 assists in 4 straight games. Mikey is one behind Michael for the longest streak in the last 40 years.
Yeah, play San Antonio tonight, 9:30 Eastern on ESPN. So we'll see where that goes. As I mentioned, D'Antoni, his coach had said he thought Harden could double his 7.5 assists. Talked about this a little bit yesterday. A lot of people kind of scoffed at that, but as I mentioned yesterday, he's leading the league with just under 13 assists per game. You know, a lot of people are wondering or saying, where does he fit into it so early? But when you project the MVP race, you know, LeBron, we know he sits for a while and saves up for the postseason, but we'll see what their record is. Russell Westbrook, I agree with you, is going to go off this year, but how often can he do that consistently and be the man? Kevin Durant has made it clear by his play. I'm not saying by his attitude, but by his play. He's the best player on that Golden State team. And, you know, they're most likely going to be the top seed. And if he's the best player on the best team, he'll have a good shot at it as well. So where does Harden fit in? I think will a lot depend on where that team is at the end of the year.
I almost feel like when you play for Mike D'Antoni, your offensive numbers should be viewed the way we view the Colorado Rockies.
Yeah.
You're just going to have so many more offensive possessions. Your team is going to take so many more shots. So if you're one if you're playing, you know, DraftKings fantasy basketball, taking a Houston Rocket is probably not a bad idea.
The top.
And then finally, the college football playoff rankings were released last night. And maybe the surprise, Mike, was that they were not surprising. That Washington just did slide at unbeaten into that 4 spot. I think we were all kind of looking for the knuckleball that the committee would throw at us because they seem to be fond of throwing knuckleballs. And last night, I think they threw a fastball right down the middle.
Well, yeah. I mean, I think those saying, Ohio State's going to be number 4, well, let's remember, because we all knew Texas A&M was going to drop, the committee last week put Washington ahead of Ohio State.
Yeah.
So they just continued that this week. They both had blowout wins. Now, certainly Ohio State had it over a ranked team in Nebraska, but they both had blowout wins, and the committee basically kept them in that same order, just shifted them both up one spot.
Yeah, I think what I meant by that was I think they have had a flair for the dramatic on that committee, and I don't have any issue. Well, let's make that off
the top.
And it's what everyone's talking about, which is brought to you by Uber. Get your side hustle on. Start driving with Uber. And you can earn extra cash whenever you want. Sign up today at uber.com/drive now. That's uber.com/drive now. And we both have been doing a bunch of interviews across the country to promote our winning word contest. And again, the winning word of the morning is coming up at 6:45 Eastern time this morning. So just about 40 minutes from now, we'll be giving you the word and the ways to enter. And you can win a trip with us to the national championship game. And so I was in this conversation yesterday talking about how the committee, the reality is, look, I like that they release these things every Tuesday night. But the reality is we know, they know, and everyone knows that they only release one set of rankings that matter. They can change their mind anytime they want. And as we've seen with what happened with TCU the first year of this thing, they don't have to stick to anything. So I was actually of the opinion that they would throw a curveball in there just for the sake of throwing a curveball in there. And that's the point I was trying to make. I have no problem with that. Give us something to talk about. Make it interesting, because the reality is all it is so much talk until the last one of these. They could completely rewrite these rankings the last week, and there'd be nothing anyone could do about it.
Yeah, the bottom line is those top 6 teams all control their own destiny. Every single one of them. Every single one of them. The first one that doesn't is Louisville. Now, some would say Auburn at 9 controls its own destiny, that if they were to beat Alabama and then go on to win the SEC, you're going to have an SEC representative in there as well. But as far as the undefeated teams and those couple of one-loss teams, I'm sorry, not
You're
top
saying
6. No. My bad. 5.
5 teams. Yeah, okay.
My bad. Completely my fault. Top 5 teams control their own destiny. Louisville does not. But Alabama does. Clemson
Louisville does not. Wisconsin may not. Wisconsin, it remains to be seen. They can play their way into a position where they'll have to be reckoned with.
Of a 2-win conference champ, Auburn can be a 2-loss conference champ. Auburn can be a 2-loss conference champ, and then you kind of get into a discussion there. But as far as the no-brainers, the top 5 all control their own destiny.
Definitely. Just because Michigan and Ohio State, to be clear, for those of you who didn't see it, it's Alabama, Clemson, Michigan, Washington, and Ohio State. That's the top 5. And yes, those 5 those 5 control their fate because Alabama can win out, Clemson can win out, Washington can win out, and Michigan and Ohio State play each other.
Right.
So that's the easy part.
Yes, it is.
Anyone can figure that out.
Without question.
The interesting part becomes, what if any of them don't?
Yep. If Wisconsin ends up doing, crashing a party, Auburn in the Iron Bowl at the end of the year, and then in the SEC game, championship game. So there's still a few wrinkles.
Here's what I'd say:
there.
If Alabama loses a very close game to Auburn at the very end, it is very hard for me to picture Alabama getting left out. Is Alabama the one-loss team that winds up in this thing? How in the world do they leave Alabama out?
Would be interesting,
right? I mean, is it even remotely possible that they don't get in? Auburn has 2 losses, but only one of them are in the conference, right? Only one. So if they beat Alabama, they're going to play in the SEC championship game, not Alabama. So Alabama's season would then end at 11-1. With if they lose, I don't think anyone thinks there's any chance this would happen. If they lose 42-6 to Auburn, we'll reconvene.
No, right.
But if they lose like the way they lost last time, on the miracle run back of the field goal and everything else, everyone with all this talk about does a 1-loss Michigan still get in? How about Alabama?
Yeah, that was the thought in the Big Ten. Could the 1-loss, the team that loses that Ohio State-Michigan game, still get in as well? But
that's what I mean. But a 1-loss Alabama.
Oh, listen, I agree with you.
But that would almost by definition mean that the SEC would have to get 2 teams in, unless I guess if Auburn lost the SEC championship game.
How would that be? They would get a team that didn't even play in the SEC.
Well, my point is that then the SEC champ would be left out, but Alabama would be in.
Yeah.
But you know what? That would be okay with me.
It's all about picking the best 4 teams.
If you're trying to figure out who the best teams are, I would have very mixed feelings on that, to be honest with you. Because winning a conference championship, it has to count for something. I don't know exactly what. What would it count for to you? Would you be comfortable if Auburn beats Alabama, loses in the conference championship game? Let's say Tennessee winds up on the other side, and Tennessee beats them. I don't think anyone thinks Tennessee is getting into the Final Four.
No.
So would you be comfortable putting Alabama in there as the lone representative from the SEC ahead of the SEC champ?
It's tough to overlook a conference champion. That's why, and we don't have it now, so what I'm doing is completely hypothetical. That's why I go to 8, and you take the conference champs, and then you have your at-larges where this can happen. It's a lot easier to do.
But it removes the deliciousness of this conversation.
Listen, I get it, and this is really all we have. Because, as I said, the top 5 control their own destiny, which a lot of times that's going to happen almost every year anyway. So you're looking for that curveball. You're looking for what's going to gum up the works. That's what we want to see.
And you almost always get it.
Look,
right now, you have 4 unbeaten teams that you could just slide in. Show me the last time that happened. I'll give you a hint. It never happened. So they're going to lose. These teams are going to lose. I know we're sitting here thinking, well, they're just going to win. They won't lose. They always do.
I'm telling you.
These teams always lose somewhere along the line.
Somebody loses. I don't know who it's going to be. As you look at their path, the toughest remaining schedule of the top 5 is Washington.
Right.
Washington, all of a sudden, USC back in the rankings, gang. They're number 20. They've run 5 in a row, different when that new quarterback took over. They've been playing well. Guess who else is in the rankings? Their last game, Washington State, is 23. So Washington's record of the top 5 teams, especially those undefeated teams, they have the toughest one going forward. So who's going to trip up? Alabama and Auburn, everybody thinks is going to be an excellent game. We'll see. Washington has a tough road. Michigan and Ohio State play. One of them is going to lose. So, it's still going to get interesting.
They've done this thing 2 years now, right? We've had this system in place 2 previous years. Each of those years, only one team has gotten in unbeaten, right? Last year it was Clemson, and the year before it was Florida State with Jameis. And that's it. Everyone else loses. Ohio State won it 2 years ago. They had a loss. Alabama won it last year. They had a loss.
Right.
So these teams somewhere along the line, history tells us, are going to lose. Now, if Alabama, Clemson, Michigan, and Washington win out, there's nothing left to talk about.
Nothing to describe. It'd be the most boring final, not boring as in games, but way of picking there is. That there's no decision to make.
And then let the games begin, and obviously that would be epic. But up until we get to that point, we don't know. Mike and Mike presented by, Progressive Insurance. In November, Progressive will give away over 100 vehicles to veterans in need as part of its Keys to Progress program, giving thanks for the freedom they've given us. To learn more, go to progressive.com/Keys to Progress. We've got a lot going on today, as you would imagine. Again, if you're just waking up and joining us, we figure people join us regularly. Our goal today is to be a place where you can get away from all of the rest of the conversation. So we are sitting here talking about sports as we do every single morning for you. And maybe it's nice to know there's something you can count on. Yeah. You know, sometimes people talk about what it is that we do. I always say, you know what, I think that there is something comforting about the notion that in an ever-changing world, those two idiots are still on there arguing about football.
Arguing about what happened on that play. We're looking at the same play and seeing different things. Arguing about how somebody parses their words. Yeah, it's just amazing and so meaningless. And yet we love it.
But that's the beauty of it.
Yeah, it is. Yeah.
Nothing in the world better than investing everything into something that means absolutely nothing. And so that's what we're doing here this morning. Here's Paul Feinbaum last night on the committee.
I think the committee made a mistake last week by putting A&M, and they got burned for it. And I'm not saying that they are now reacting or overreacting. Possibly they are, and that's why I think they move Washington up. But this is a very bizarre process if you're sitting there in Idaho or Maine or somewhere else in the country watching this, trying to understand it. People in the nation haven't gone through these mocks like all of us. They don't live and die this every day. So it is easy to nitpick, and I have been there. You know that. We've had this conversation every year, but I think we're 2 weeks into it, and I think it is a snapshot. It's an inconsistent snapshot. It is a transparent method, but there are always going to be faults, and I think the one thing that doesn't make a lot of sense is LSU falling to the bottom, but we are so focused at the very top. And I think right now they have that right. And anyone in Columbus or in Ohio who wants to complain, that's fine. Ohio State has proven a great deal. But Ohio State will move up. We all know that if they win out. And I think that's the thing that most people need to keep their eyes on.
You know, every week, Reese Davis, when they do the show, talks to Kirby Hocutt, the chairman. He's a Texas Tech AD. He's a former linebacker in college football, I believe, at Kansas State. And that's what I look forward to listen to see if anything changes, because these are 13 human beings who have a list of criteria for them, but each one values some differently. I mean, that's the whole idea of the vote. You have different, we just went through that on a national level. You have different things that that affects you, and that's how you may vote. And as far as the president that we just went on, as far as this, a committee member may vote on what they feel is the most important thing to them, which to the person sitting right next to them could be something different. That's this whole idea of the committee. So that's why I'm interested every week to hear Kirby talk about what went into it this time and see if it changes and see if we're left with, well, wait, last week you said this week you said that, but these are 13 human beings. So I think at times you're going to get a different thought. I have said it, and I'd stay with it. The old BCS system with all the computers and the one human poll all going into a pot and coming out with 2 teams, then I would use it here and come out with 4 teams. I would use it here and come out with 6 teams, and I would use it here and come out with 8 teams when you eventually go to 6 teams and 8 teams, which I think you will. But right now we have the committee, so we'll talk about humans making decisions, and no two humans are alike. They're going to make their decision for different reasons.
Right. I totally agree with you. As anyone who listens to the show knows, I hate the human element in anything in sports. If it can be removed, it should be removed. Now, the only reason in which I would disagree with what I just said myself is that I am a talk show host for a living, and this gives us a lot more to talk about. If you just put a bunch of numbers into a computer, there'd be nothing to discuss. You could argue about what the criteria should be going into the computer, but then once the computer spits the names out, we just play the games. This way, there's a lot to talk about.
Agreed.
And as far as I'm concerned, purely selfishly, that's a good thing.
Yeah.
I got 4 hours to do today, the morning after the election. You better give me something to talk about. So I'm good with that. But the reality is, my honest opinion, it is a stupid and ridiculous way to decide who should win a championship. If you could find a computer that could decide figure skating, I'd be in favor of that. And the only reason that figure skating is determined by judges is no other way to do it.
Right.
And other
Between that
gymnastics
and yeah.
even boxing, I mean, to some degree, right? You got boxing judges and all of that, because if it's not a knockout, then someone has to decide who won and who lost. But it would be great if there was some better way of doing it, and it would be great if that existed here.
I have an eventual question for you. You are a computers guy over the human element.
And certainly when it comes to sports,
okay.
yes.
I do have a question to ask you.
Let's hear it. You want to save it? Are you teasing it?
No. All right, I'll ask it.
Go ahead.
It's coming out big time now. The self-driving cars.
Yeah.
You up for that?
Well, I mean,
you up for the computer driving your car, not you? You hate the human element? Make the computer drive it. You just sit there?
Yeah.
No, thank you. No, thank you. No.
What do you mean? I don't know enough about them. Once they have gotten to a point, I think they will eventually get to a point where it will be much safer to be in a machine-driven car than a human-driven car.
Don't want it. I don't want it. I don't trust it, man. I don't trust it. I just don't. I'm watching the videos.
You trust the computer less than you trust all the other individual human beings around you driving.
Yes.
Who could be in any condition, any state of mind, any level of intoxication.
I trust myself holding the wheel of a car.
That's you. I get you, but I'm talking about all the other people. I remember when I first learned how to drive, my best friend Simon, he said his father said something to us that I'll never forget. He said, just driving your car around by yourself, that's not the hard part of driving.
No.
It's all the other people you have to worry
driving defensively
about.
all the time.
Yeah.
Yes. No, I don't want a computer driver.
No, I welcome. Listen, I'm going to have to see all kinds of data that says
I'm watching
we
these
figured out a way to make this work.
where the driver is in the back cab while this. Oh no, no! Either that, or it's going to take me a long, long time to get used to something like that.
Well, we're going to need to see some numbers, but no, I would. Yes, I actually think that could wind up being a great thing. I think we should get to a point where eventually machines can do everything for us, and I can just stay home and rest. Mike and Mike present. What we need to do is create a machine that looks just like me, sounds just like me, and actually makes sense. And have that thing here every 4 hours, just do the reads, and we'll get on with our lives.
The beautiful thing about that computer is I could unplug
it. But not until after it says that we're presented by Progressive Insurance, and that our guest list today, all of whom will join us on the Shell Pennzoil Performance Line, will include John Gruden and Kirk Herbstreit and Paul Feinbaum and Jamel and Craig Sager today. He's got a book out, and you're going to want to hear from him. Todd McShay today, and so many more. If you miss anything on Mike and Mike, you can always catch up. You can listen to any and all 4 hours of Mike and Mike on demand in the ESPN app. And most importantly, the winning word of the morning is coming up in 25 minutes, 6:45 Eastern Time. Your chance to win a trip to the college football national championship game with us. NFL coaches saying crazy things yesterday. The league itself saying something I don't understand at all. Those and more as we continue on this post-election day edition of Mike and Mike after a word from AutoZone. You know, Mike, at AutoZone, they do everything they can to put you in your zone. Whether it's getting you the right part or giving the helpful advice you need, they'll always help you get there.
And as you're going to find out for the first time this morning in about 25 minutes, our friends at AutoZone are helping you get on the road with us to the national championship game. Just be listening and watching our show now through November 15th. For your chance to win in Mike and Mike's at the College Football Playoff Sweepstakes, again, presented by AutoZone. You could be joining us. There's going to be 15 winners and their guests, so 30 people joining us in Tampa Bay for a championship experience of a lifetime. We, again, always want to thank our friends at AutoZone. They'll always help you get there with thousands of parts in stock and helpful people to guide you. They've got everything you need to tackle your auto maintenance and repair projects with confidence. Get in the zone, AutoZone. Visit Mike'sRoadToTheCFP.com for official rules. That's Mike'sRoadToTheCFP.com. We hope to see you at the National Championship game with us. Back after this, Mike and Mike.
All right, Mike and Mike in our Sports Center update. Washington has moved into the top 4 of the college football playoff ranking. The top 3 remain the same. So it goes Alabama, Clemson, Michigan, and Washington all unbeaten. The Cleveland Cavaliers are no longer unbeaten. The defending champs lose their first game of the season. They fall by 4 to Atlanta. And among the things that happened on election night last night that directly impact football fans, The Chargers stadium ballot initiative fails, so that opens the door for the Chargers to again pursue a move to Los Angeles. SportsCenter is brought to you by Dollar Shave Club.
Right now is your chance to see why so many of us love Dollar Shave Club. If you're not a member and have never joined, you can get your first month of razors free. Just pay shipping. After that, it's only a few bucks. Join today at dollarshaveclub.com/Mike.
Before we get to the NFL, a little bit of Twitter reaction on the conversation about the college football playoffs from last night. And again, for those of you just joining us, as we have every single day for 16 years, this was our fourth election day working together. We've been in here on that Wednesday every single morning. We were here on that Wednesday morning. Our very first one together was the year that it wasn't decided yet. And ultimately, Al Gore and George W. Bush wound up going to the Supreme Court and everything else. And so as we said that morning, and we've said every morning since, and we'll say again this morning, if you're with us today on ESPN2 or on ESPN Radio, we are under the assumption it is because you would like a break from all of that conversation, and we will try to be that break.
Yeah, you've got plenty of places that while we've been through 4 elections, this has been, without question, the most, whatever word you want to use for it, whatever word you use is going to be a true word. So we've gone through that. But you know, we're going to do our thing like we've done and just go from there to talk about other elections or other votes like the San Diego vote, and we'll see where they go. Like the fact, I think, 5 more states made marijuana legal, so there'll be some happy people there as well. So some amazing things have gone on, but we'll get back to the San Diego thing because I definitely want to. Because another team in L.A. already have one in L.A., and I was the first right away that said, I don't think it's going to work back in L.A. again, and now you're telling me you might put 2 teams in L.A. I just don't see it, but that's down the road we may be going.
Here's what I guess I don't know, and I don't know if you have information I don't. It's one thing to how do we measure whether it's working or not in L.A., which is to say,
it's fair. Yeah.
Is the stadium filled? Are people, in that city seem totally consumed by the team? It doesn't seem like it's going that way right now. Now, the team is somewhat uninteresting and bad. And, if the rookie quarterback starts playing, maybe that changes. But even beyond that, we all know that, like any business, the NFL's bottom line is their primary concern. Are there financial reasons why it is working for them, especially when they get that new stadium complex built and all the things they're planning on doing around it?
Right, exactly.
Is that going to wind up being a win for them beyond what we might think of as a win?
You are absolutely right. There could be reasons for it that they say this is absolutely financially working for us.
Yeah, and I don't know that it is.
I don't either.
The one thing I would then also ask is, do you need 2 teams to do that? Well, if you just have one team, is that enough? Mm-hmm. Are you going to get the Chargers to move there and the Raiders are going to move to Vegas and all of this? Is that a definitive thing now? Are the Raiders definitely moving to Las Vegas?
Right.
There could be a little bit of upheaval in
you just see what
NFL
the people want.
teams.
In San Diego, they knocked that down. And how about in Arlington? They approved some tax hikes for a new baseball stadium there. So, different places, have their different priorities to what people want or what people will be willing to pay for.
So let's go to back to some of the Twitter reaction here on the on the topics of the college football playoff through the 1-800-Flowers.com Twitter feed, trying to make up for another weekend spent in your football lair. Remind your loved one you still exist with a 1-800-Flowers bouquet of 36 autumn roses for only $36. Go to 1-800-Flowers.com/ESPN. Hurry, because the offer ends on Friday. Robert tweets, I think they did a pretty darn good job with the selection. I'm pretty comfortable saying those are the top 5 teams. Well, that doesn't, no disrespect to you, Robert, or anyone else. This was the easiest thing ever.
Oh, yeah.
Right?
I
mean,
agree, yeah.
Ohio State, the only thing that you could be parsing is Ohio State versus Louisville. Louisville's loss is a little better than Ohio State's loss. They were both incredibly close games. Ohio State lost a crazy game on a field goal that got blocked and run back for a touchdown to a team that's ranked number 12. Louisville lost basically by 1 yard to a team that's ranked number 2.
Right.
But you look at the overall body of work, Ohio State's is a little better than Louisville's.
Yeah. Right.
So that was a pretty easy thing to do. The question is going to be, as things progress forward, if all these other unbeatens, or many of them, lose,
then what happens?
How do they elevate teams?
When the wrench gets thrown into the gears, then we see how the committee is going to vote. You'll see more of, to them, what their top criteria is. Right now, that hasn't happened.
Michael tweets, how about a 2-loss Penn State team if Michigan stumbles twice? That's very tough to picture. If you look at the remainder of Michigan's schedule, they may lose to Ohio State. It's very tough for me to picture them losing twice. Not to mention the fact that if Michigan does lose to Ohio State, then it's Ohio State that's going to wind up playing for for the Big Ten title. So I find that extraordinarily tough.
I do as well. Exactly. Penn State's hitting at number 12, though.
They've had a very good year.
The Big Ten been represented well.
There's no question they've had a very good year, and no one is arguing that. But Michigan, the rest of the way, they go to Iowa. Okay, let me take that back. Could they lose at Iowa this Saturday night?
Night game. It's a night game on the road in Iowa. Iowa up and down team. Could they? Yes. Will they? I don't think they will, but that certainly is no gimme by any stretch of the imagination. I agree.
Then they play Indiana.
Right.
Indiana's sort of an up-and-down team. When they play well, they're dangerous, but certainly you'd expect Michigan to win that.
Yep. Then Ohio State.
And then they go to Ohio State, where I'm on record. I believe they will lose that game. I believe Ohio State is going to win that game.
That's going to be an interesting one because that Michigan defense is really good. That D-line of Penn State really controlled the offensive line for Ohio State. That'll be a fun one to break down in a couple of weeks.
And Chuck tweets, the committee understands that only one Big Ten team is making the playoffs this year. I don't know what that means.
I don't know if I agree with that at all.
The committee understands that?
They understand what? I mean, seriously?
The way that a one-loss – no, let me rephrase that. The way a non-conference champion gets in is with some surprising conference champions.
Right.
If all the teams that we would expect, that we would project to be college conference champions wind up being that, then there's going to be very little mystery on that final ranking.
Exactly right.
It's if those teams lose that all of these questions come into play. Okay, speaking of questions, there were a lot about one particular sequence in the game between Buffalo and Seattle the other night. I'll hold off on Rex and Pete Carroll for a moment. Let's just visit the part about the officiating, because you and me and Ryan Clark and so many others yesterday were talking about whether what Richard Sherman did should or should not have been a penalty. The league said it should. You weren't so sure that it should have been an unnecessary roughness penalty. I think we are all in agreement that the officials completely messed up, screwed up the spotting of the ball and all of that, which directly cost the Bills 3 points. To me, that was a much more egregious mistake. And our Ed Werder yesterday said that Dean Blandino and company at the league will be taking a very close look at the performance of the officials in that game.
Dean Blandino is the vice president of officiating for the NFL, and it's an extraordinary measure that immediately after this game, he goes on the NFL's television network and does concede that the officiating crew made 2 errors in the immediate aftermath of the game at halftime, as you described. So what happens now, according to him, is they go through and evaluate the crew per their normal post-game course. They do have the ability to review every play, and they will, I was told, consider the possibility of disciplining this crew. We have seen a previous example of that discipline, including taking a member of a crew off a game. They also obviously have the ability to assign Walt Anderson and his crew a lesser profile game should they choose to do so. But I'm not sure how fair that is to whoever gets that crew and the lack of confidence that the people involved in that game might have.
Listen, as far as disciplining an officiating crew, it all is going to come down to how egregious the powers that be think it is. Because you look at players get fined and or suspended. If the act is egregious enough right off the bat, they can get suspended. If they get fined and they do it multiple times, then it can lead to a suspension. That's how it works for players. So how should it work for officials? Were those 2 acts egregious enough on their own to warrant you don't officiate you and your crew don't officiate for the next 2 weeks? Or is it you get is it like a fine where you get a lesser game? I mean, that's what it's going to come down to, is how we see how players are disciplined. So now how are you disciplined? In this case, referees, could be umpires, could be officials from any sport. How do you feel, how egregious do you feel their act was, their mistake was egregious enough to actually take them off their field of play? That's what this comes down to.
I would not like the notion of assigning them to a quote-unquote lesser game.
Completely agree with you.
It's one thing, there are some games that are lesser than others in the eyes of the public, but they cannot be deemed as lesser games. They certainly aren't by the players and the coaches in there.
I agree with you, and I don't know and I honestly don't know this. I know with players you can take their money and you can take their playing time. I don't know if you can do that with an official. I don't know what are the barriers of disciplining an official? Is it only suspension? Is it the lesser game? Can they fine him? Can they make him play, officiate and not get paid? I don't know. I mean,
You're doing this game without pay.
Yeah, that's exactly right. Or can we suspend you without? I don't know.
I don't either. I can't believe they can do that.
I can't either. So is there only recourse either suspend them for games or put them on lesser games, which I agree with you. I think that's a horrible idea.
I mean, how can the league come out and say,
this game stinks, we believe, so you go do it.
It's
That's your punishment.
Nobody cares. So we're not even, in this game, we're only going to have 2 refs.
Yeah, exactly.
It doesn't make any difference. Yeah. All right, the winning word of the morning is coming up. You'll hear from Rex. You'll hear from Pete Carroll, and you'll hear the league say something else I couldn't for the life of me understand. All those are on the way after this word from Tommy John. Mike, when things sound too good to be true, they usually are. But when Tommy John says their underwear never rides up, that is an absolute fact.
Every pair made from feather, light, breathable fabrics that move with you, not against you, providing the perfect balance of support and mind-blowing comfort. Plus, all Tommy John underwear are backed by the best pair you'll ever wear or its free guarantee. Make sure you use that code Mike at TommyJohn.com for 20% off your first order. That's Mike, 20% off at TommyJohn.com. That's TommyJohn.com. We're back after this, Mike and Mike.
The Denver Broncos, Von Miller.
I'm Von Miller. Salute to service to all the veterans out there. We really appreciate you guys. You guys are the reason why we have this. And I thank you guys. Appreciate it.
Geico, 15 minutes could save you 15% or more on car insurance. Visit geico.com.
Mike and Mike in our Sports Center, which is brought to you by Protection One. Sports action sure heats up in the fall, but unfortunately burglaries don't slow down. Let Protection One watch over your home and family. Go to protectionone.com/Mike for a Protection One home security system starting at about $1 a day. We have a lot to get to this morning, but most importantly, we have this. We are thrilled to be partnered with our friends at AutoZone to give you a chance to be on the road with us to the national championship game. It's time for the daily word of the morning. Get in the zone, AutoZone. We're going to give you the word right now. Golik's going to give you the 2 ways to enter, and you should use both of them to double your chances of being today's winner. There's a winner every day, and that winner, along with the guest, is coming with us to the college championship game. Now, I don't even know really where to begin with this.
Yeah, I have issues as well.
So we have told Brooksy that we wanted the word to be an obvious word.
Yeah.
Something that it's obvious how you spell it, and it's obvious what context it should be used in, meaning it's not one of those words like your, that there are a couple of different ways that it could be done, or there,
yeah,
or something like that. And Brooksy, I think, started feeling good about himself. And so today he got painfully cute. Today's word is obvious.
Yeah.
No, I mean that literally, not figuratively.
It is obvious.
The word is obvious. Obvious.
Mm-hmm.
And I'm adding the B in my pronunciation of it, just so everyone is clear that there is a B in that word.
Well, there's a B. There's other issues as well. We had the whole I before E. Now we have the I-O before U rules going on. The I-O before U and only after V. There's so many rules that you have to follow with that. So, what are you doing, Brooksy? I don't get it. You know what I mean?
You're going to make me laugh. I'm not going to lie to you. You did it. You did. You made me laugh. Anyway, the word of the day is obvious.
Mm-hmm.
He said both literally and figuratively.
Yes.
OBVIOUS. And if you have any interest in saving the job of an idiot producer, you will enter in enormous numbers today, and these are the 2 ways.
Only 2 ways. This is the most important thing. We have our fun with the word, gang. We know you're going to get the word, but the most important thing is entering that word, because if you do it any other way but the 2 ways I'm going to tell you, you will not be entered. And this is a trip of a lifetime for you and a guest. So make sure you use the word obvious and you text it to 777-000. And you can do it another way. Enter it online at Mike'sRoadToTheCFP.com. Again, take the word, and this word is obvious. Text it to 777-000 or enter online at mikesroadtothecfp.com, and we hope you're joining us for a great trip to the national title game.
Yeah, that really will be fun, and we did it last year, and it's a great trip. We have dinner the night before the game. You come to our show. You'll meet all the people who will be on our show, and there will be anyone you could be interested in meeting in the world of college football.
One thing I'll tell you, when you do this trip, you eat a lot. We had the dinner before. You'll come to the show where they have a breakfast, and then after that we have a brunch with you as well. And then we'll go to the game and eat all kinds of food.
There's a tailgate.
Tailgate before the game, and then the game. So it's almost like the cruise where you're going to gain 5 pounds, with all you're going to eat, which is cool by me.
And as far as Vegas is concerned, the Westgate Las Vegas Superbook, the odds to win the national championship, the two favorites, thus the two teams Vegas thinks are likeliest to be the two we're sitting there watching together are Alabama and...
Is it Clemson? Michigan.
It's Ohio State.
Really?
It is Ohio State next. Oh. The best odds to win the national championship, according to Westgate, are Alabama at at even money, followed by Ohio State at 7-2, followed by Michigan at 5-1, followed by Washington at 6-1, then Clemson at 7-1. After that come Louisville, Wisconsin, Auburn, and Oklahoma is at 40-1. So the money in Vegas is on Ohio State. I'll say this. Yeah. I think Ohio State is a reasonable one. I'll say this, and listen, how in the world, what difference does it make? I will forever believe Ohio State was the best team in the country last year. They never played like it. I think they showed you that sometimes having a bunch of seniors that might all have kind of different agendas don't work, and they had the quarterback thing that I think Urban, who I think is a brilliant coach, never quite got that right. I think he really struggled getting the whole Cardale Jones, J.T. Barrett thing right. And somehow when they finally lost a game, it seems to have freed them up. And if you watched them play after that, what they did to Michigan and then what they did to Notre Dame, if they played like that all year long, I think they were the best team in the country.
Yeah, I mean, listen, they had a chance for it, and it didn't happen. So
they didn't get it done.
No,
I mean, you can't. I'm not in any way.
Without a doubt.
Don't get me wrong. I'm not suggesting anyone is to blame, that anything unfair happened.
Right.
They just never played the way they should have.
And what a road they and Michigan, and that game at Ohio State in a few weeks is going to be unbelievable, and maybe to get yourself that rematch then with Wisconsin, with both teams had a tough game with Wisconsin. So that's a heck of a road that either team has to make.
For what it's worth, there is still a lot of time left. Last year, Oklahoma made the college football playoff. After the second ranking, they were 12th. Mm-hmm. Michigan State made the college football playoff. After the second ranking, they were 13th. The year before that, Ohio State made the national semifinals. In the second ranking, they were 14th. So there is a lot left to be settled before we decide these four teams. We'll turn to the NFL next. John Gruden will join us and a whole lot more as we continue on a Wednesday with Mike and Mike.
Rocket Mortgage by Quicken Loans proudly supports Mike and Mike. Rocket Mortgage brings the mortgage process into the 21st century. Forget about digging through stacks of paperwork. This completely online process lets you safely share your bank statements and pay stubs with a touch of a button. Using your phone or tablet, you can get approved for purchase or refinance in just a few minutes. Get a custom mortgage solution at your own pace, whenever and wherever you want. So if you're looking to refinance or buy a home, check out Rocket Mortgage today at quickenloans.com/Mikes.
Equal housing lender licensed in all 50 states. NMLSconsumeraccess.org number 3030.
I'm Andy Katz from ESPN along with my co-host Seth Greenberg. On Courtside with Katz and Coach G, we'll be joined by Arizona head coach Sean Miller and Indiana head coach Tom Crean in advance of the Armed Forces Classic in Honolulu.
Red Hot USC heads to Seattle to face 5th-ranked Washington.
72 yards, the big play strike.
Coverage begins Saturday at 7 Eastern on ESPN Radio and the ESPN app.